News every 15 minutes, weather every 10, and sports twice an hour.
Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM.
You're listening to Montana Morning with Peter Christian.
University of Montana officials seeking people who wish to retire to cut the budget. Good morning, everyone. Montana Morning for Monday, March 20th, 2017. Happy first day of spring, everybody. I thought it was tomorrow, but according to the calendar, it says it's today. So happy first day of spring. It's certainly going to feel like it today with a pretty good chance of rain and a high near 50. Right now it's 28 degrees under a partly cloudy sky. Our newscast this morning, sponsored by Bulls Eyewear, Missoula's only certified master optician on South Reserve at the old R.P. Ellis location. Give them a call, 552-1299. One of this morning's top stories, the University of Montana surveying faculty and staff about their interest in early retirement as the university still seeks to cut spending due to decreasing enrollment. The Missoulian reports the email, which was sent out last week, asked employees for their age, their years at UM, their interest in early retirement, the year they had planned to retire, and the earliest retirement possibility with an adequate incentive. They were also asked to name their biggest concern at the U of M. Answers are due by tomorrow. UM spokeswoman Paula Short says the university is still exploring a buyout and is asking potential eligible employees what they see as the possible benefits and barriers of such a program. The Commissioner of Higher Education has said UM needs to reduce its staffing budget. And it is in a related story, when President Donald Trump released his proposed federal budget last week, the budget for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was cut to zero, which translates to a loss of about $240,000 a year for Montana Public Radio. Director of Broadcast Media at the University of Montana, Ray Eknes, said Friday his budget would be cut by about 10%.
72% of our budget is raised from listeners and from sponsors. And, well, the 10% blow would hurt us. We would have to make some serious changes. We would have to think about what programs we might have to eliminate, whether they're national or local.
Eknes said some very popular nationally broadcast programs might have to be eliminated.
We pay for All Things Considered in Morning Edition. We pay for the BBC News that's on overnight and at 12:30 in the afternoon. We pay for American public media programs such as This American Life, Prairie Home Companion. Those are all programs that we have to pay for. We're part of the network that allows us to run those, but we still have to pay for those programs.
Trump's budget also calls for total elimination of all federal funding for the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. A 6-year-old boy survived a crash into the Missouri River Canal in southwestern Montana that killed his mother. The Montana Highway Patrol said the boy escaped the sinking sport utility vehicle Saturday night and was rescued by people camping in the area who heard the crash. The patrol says 28-year-old Billings woman sped away from the Toston Dam campground about 10:15 p.m. She lost control of her SUV on a curve in the gravel road and crashed into the dam's intake canal. Sergeant Glenn Barkas said the SUV quickly sank, but the boy was able to get out, and on top of the vehicle, he suffered minor injuries. Fellow campers were unable to pull the woman out of the vehicle. Her name has not yet been released. The Montana House passed its budget last Friday, and Republican Party leaders believe it can now pass through the Senate relatively unchanged. House Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Nancy Balance explains.
We decided that we would take more of the hit in terms of making some of the tough decisions over here in the House, so that by the time it got to the Senate, they were not in a position where they had to either cut more or add a lot back in. I think the Senate would also tell you that the budget we are sending them is pretty clean, pretty close to where we need to be, and I would not expect a lot of big changes over in the Senate.
Balance said there is one major item the Senate will need to accomplish, and that is to fill a $10 million hole in Medicaid services pertaining to senior and long-term care.
There was $10 million that had come back into the state that was Medicaid money returned from the federal government, which the government basically made available to the highway department, and we want that money back. So we're holding firm on that. We want it back in Medicaid where it belongs, so we left that $10 million hole. It has to be filled.
Balance said once the Highway Department gets its matching federal funds, it can easily fill that $10 million hole. Balance says House and Senate leadership met twice a week throughout the budgeting process, so there shouldn't be any big surprises. An appeals court has refused to stop the imminent flow of oil through the Dakota Access Pipeline. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit on Saturday denied a request from the Standing Rock and Cheyenne River Sioux tribes for an emergency order. That means the pipeline to move North Dakota oil to Illinois could be operating as early as today. It could be flowing right now, in fact. The Standing Rock and Cheyenne River Sioux tribes have been trying to stop that from happening while their legal challenge against the pipeline proceeds. The $3.8 billion pipeline will move North Dakota oil to Illinois. Glacier National Park has announced that hand-propelled watercraft such as kayaks, canoes, and paddleboards will be permitted in the park with mandatory inspections beginning May 15th. On Friday, Superintendent of Glacier National Park Jeff Mao told me that the park was closed to all watercraft last fall after invasive mussels were discovered in 2 locations within the state of Montana.
We've been looking at it all winter and conversations with the state and others who are looking at that infestation on the Missouri. And so we decided to lift our closure by allowing for what we call hand-propelled watercraft in the park to be operated in the park with a mandatory inspection.
Mao said the ramifications of allowing invasive mussels in Glacier Park would be disastrous to downstream waterways.
We are at the heart of the crown of the continent, and that, we have headwaters of rivers that go out to Hudson Bay, Gulf of Mexico, and the Pacific Ocean. So really, if we get an infestation in the park, we have, it wouldn't take much to spread it to vast other areas of the lower 48 states.
Mao said inspection stations will be set up at 4 different locations throughout the park. After weeks of double and triple workloads, the Missoula County Attorney's Office got an odd week of surprisingly low crime. Missoula County Chief Deputy Attorney Jason Marks explains.
Well, I would say, unfortunately, more of the usual. Had about 10 new cases, 10 new felony cases filed this week, which is back down to around normal. We had kind of a crazy week before that, but more of the usual, methamphetamine, domestic violence, all that. It was I guess, kind of nice return to normal.
And also twice last week, the jail roster was empty, and police had multiple days with no in-custody cases. Finally, the U.S. Postal Service is refusing to mail a promotional flyer for a Billings church. The flyer resembles a sheet of yellow notepad paper. It is printed with just a few words that look like they've been typed on a typewriter. The flyer reads, quote, "We're going to have to kill him," end quote, with the capital H, a reference not to a mysterious murder plot, but to the crucifixion of Jesus. The Billings Gazette reports the Harvest Church created the flyer to promote a series of sermons leading up to Easter. Church officials say the Postal Service refused to mail the flyer because of its threatening content. Postal Service officials said the flyer failed to include a return address and did not meet several other formatting standards. Our News Talk time, 6:12.
News Talk, KGVO.
Missoula's official weather station.
Partly to mostly cloudy skies with rain likely late this afternoon. Daytime highs will be in the mid to upper 40s. Winds will be breezy with wind gusts up to 20 miles per hour. Tonight, chance of showers, lows right around freezing. I'm meteorologist Brooke Foster for Missoula's KECI 13.